The book No Longer Human was written by Osamu Dazai, a famous Japanese writer born in 1909. Dazai is well known for his stories about people who feel lonely and struggle to fit into society. No Longer Human, published in 1948, is one of his most famous books. It is based on parts of Dazai's own life and tells the story of Oba Yozo, a young man who feels like he doesn't belong in the world. The story is told through a series of notebooks found after Yozo's death. These notebooks reveal his thoughts and emotions, which he could never share with others. Even as a child, Yozo feels different from the people around him. He grows up in a wealthy family, but feels distant from his parents and siblings. He learns early on that the best way to survive is to entertain others. At school, he becomes a class clown, making people laugh to hide his true feelings. However, this does not bring him real friendships. He feels like an actor, constantly performing for others. He learns how to imitate normal social behavior without truly understanding it, making him feel even more detached. He constantly wonders why he cannot understand the natural expressions of happiness and sadness in other people, which only deepens his feelings of alienation. As he grows older, Yozo moves to Tokyo for higher education. Instead of focusing on studies, he gets involved with drinking, smoking, and spending time with artists and revolutionaries. He meets a woman named Tsuneko, a bar hostess, and they attempt suicide together by drowning. However, Yozo survives while Tsuneko dies. This event haunts him, making him feel even more detached from the world. His guilt and shame push him further into despair, and he stops attending university. Instead, he drifts aimlessly, relying on others for financial and emotional support, all while deepening his self-destructive habits. The cycle of escaping reality through indulgence begins, and he slowly starts losing all ambition. He spends more time associating with troubled individuals who encourage his reckless behavior, which accelerates his downward spiral. After leaving school, Yozo meets a woman named Shizuko, a kind-hearted but fragile woman who offers him a sense of security. They begin living together, and for a brief time, Yozo finds some happiness. However, his old habits soon return. He starts drinking excessively, cheating on Shizuko, and accumulating debts. Eventually, Shizuko can no longer bear his self-destructive behavior and leaves him. Alone once again, Yozo falls deeper into his vices and aimlessness. He cannot hold on to any sense of responsibility or purpose, drifting between gambling and substance abuse. His mental state continues to decline as he isolates himself from those who care about him. His days are spent in a haze of regret and addiction, and he finds himself avoiding any real emotional connection. His dependency on alcohol and drugs grows stronger, and soon he loses all ability to maintain even the most basic aspects of daily life. Drifting through life, Yozo moves from one woman to another, never finding real love or connection. He meets Yoshiko, a pure and innocent woman who believes she can help him become a better person. They marry, and for a short time, it seems that Yozo may finally find stability. However, his past catches up with him when he meets Tsubuchi, a widow who seduces him. While Yozo is away with Tsubuchi, Yoshiko is assaulted by another man. This event shatters her innocence and completely destroys Yozo's fragile sense of self-worth. He blames himself and begins to believe he is beyond redemption. His marriage falls apart, and he loses the last connection keeping him tied to normal society. His increasing paranoia and inability to process his emotions send him spiraling even further into despair. He attempts to find solace in momentary pleasures, but each indulgence only adds to his growing guilt. Falling into despair, Yozo turns to heavy drug use, particularly morphine. He loses his job, isolates himself from everyone, and his addiction worsens. As his physical and mental health deteriorate, he becomes a shell of his former self. His friends abandon him, and his life spirals out of control. Eventually, he is taken to a mental institution where he is officially declared no longer human, a person who has lost all connection to society and humanity. He spends his last days in isolation, cut off from the world before dying alone. His tragic fate is a slow decline, driven by his inability to reconcile his identity with the expectations of those around him. He dies convinced that he was never truly part of society, believing himself to be a shadow of a man rather than a real person. Yozo's journey from childhood to adulthood is marked by his inability to connect with others and his self-destructive tendencies. Every time he seems to find a glimmer of hope, his actions or circumstances pull him back into despair. His story is a reflection of Dazai's own struggles with addiction, depression, and the feeling of being an outsider in society. His experiences are filled with failed attempts at redemption, each bringing him closer to his downfall. Through a cycle of relationships, betrayals, and self-sabotage, he gradually destroys every opportunity for happiness that he encounters. The inevitability of his downfall is reinforced by his refusal to seek true help and his growing belief that he is undeserving of love and acceptance. One of the most tragic elements of the story is how Yozo's fate seems inevitable. His early experiences of alienation shape his adult decisions, making it impossible for him to function in a world that demands emotional stability and conformity. Despite fleeting moments of happiness, he is ultimately unable to overcome his deep-seated sense of detachment and failure. His relationships serve as a temporary escape, but they inevitably crumble, reinforcing his belief that he is undeserving of love or companionship. His decline is slow and painful, filled with self-inflicted wounds that could have been avoided had he accepted help or allowed himself to form genuine connections. In conclusion, No Longer Human is a deeply moving and heartbreaking novel about a man who is unable to find his place in the world. Through Yozo's story, the novel explores themes of alienation, self-destruction, and the devastating effects of unresolved trauma. The story of Yozo is not just a cautionary tale, but also a haunting exploration of the fragility of the human condition. His final fate, one of isolation and hopelessness, serves as a chilling warning of what can happen when internal suffering is left unchecked, making No Longer Human a novel that continues to resonate deeply with those who feel lost in their own existence. The novel's emotional weight lingers long after it is read, making it one of the most profound explorations of human suffering in modern literature.